Hi, everyone.
Hello, everybody. Your mic's over there.
Oh,
Look at our guest is here. Better late than never. We were very scared because up till about a minute ago, we didn't even see that our guest was going to be here. We can't hear you now, Steve McCurdy, but we do have him. We actually came up with an entirely different show thinking that you might be in a different time zone.
we actually thought it's a wonderful chaos, so let's just improvise.
And we've never had a problem with that. But it's still much better to have Steve McCurdy on. And Steve is a special person. Why, Bambos?
I don't know, Andy.
He's special because he read my damn audiobook.
Oh.
But come on, Bambos, please. God damn it. I mean, of all the accomplishments Steve McCurdy has had in his life, this has to be up there with one of those peak experiences.
Well, I was thinking his accomplishment to fall in love and travel across the US. Come on.
Yes. Okay. Well, we'll give him that as well. So, welcome to this episode of a wonderful
Chaos.
Yes, we are live with Steve McCurdy.
Well, not yet.
Well, almost live with Steve McCurdy. Steve, we had sort of a beautiful coming together, Steve and I. When I did the first book, it was kind of spontaneous act. It was on the iPhone, not a lot of big planning. Everyone that I learned afterwards, when you do a book launch, you do it about a year ahead. Like you don't just say, "Oh, I wrote a book last week and I want to launch it 3 months from now." Like that's kind of unheard of.
Yeah.
So when I did that, I thought, okay, now I need to figure out ways to maybe get it more into the market. One of those ways was, of course, voiceover work. So I went to Fiverr, as people do, or I went to one of the other services checking out voices. And they were like, each voice sounded as similar to the next in a way. They were a bit polished. They were a bit, and then I heard this golden voice, the Steve McCurdy voice. And it was almost like I felt like I was a kid under the covers and I was being read a bedtime story.
To be completely honest.
Yes.
When you also read your book out,
yeah,
it felt the same way. Okay. I don't want to discredit Steve, but
okay,
there was a comforting, bedtime story kind of feel.
Okay, well, I have this dyslexia thing. Sometimes, so when I read my words, I stop between each word, and then it feels like it doesn't connect on the way I want it.
That's in your head.
Okay, well, that's in my head. Regardless, we had the contact. Steve read the book, and every chapter he'd write a message to me of what the chapter meant to him. So I got this incredibly beautiful experience, not only the book, but him sharing how each chapter had some impact in his own life, which was really special.
When Andy shared this with me, I really Andy, that's beautiful. You guys should have actually documented this.
I know we should have, but I did. I was living on a wing and a prayer. I didn't know what next day would bring, but I had the book, and then that brought Steve and I together. And now I've been following him because he's like this sort of kind of not that old guy, but he is that kind of old guy because he creates videos like you'd see a little teenager create and puts them online, which is really incredible.
What do you mean, teenager?
He's a video editor and he edits his life. He'll do a trip to Georgia and then he'll edit it down in a 3 or 5 minute segment. So it's appealing. Unlike our 1 hour segments that no one listens to anyways. He'll do a 3 or 5 minute segment just so people want to watch him. And that's cool. So, and then I'm always wanting to get people that I love on. And then he did something crazy. I don't want to use the word stupid because that would be too far fetched. We'll wait for him to get online till we do. But he said it's 70, and I think it's 70. We'll have to confirm numbers. But he just said, you know what? I'm in love. I've lived in this one location. He was pretty networked in that location because you could see from his post, it wasn't that he wasn't fond of his place in Texas. He was in Texas at the time. And he fell in love with some woman in Georgia. And so he goes from...
Wait. How did he meet this woman in Georgia?
We'll figure that out when we get him online. But he goes from he goes to Valdosta. And the only thing I now know of Valdosta is it's the most dangerous place to live in the world because they basically said that you can have COVID and walk freely in their city. So in essence, he made kind of a not strategic decision there, but we will get to that as well. And and I think without further ado, it would be great to welcome Steve McCurdy onto our show.
I
There's
don't
the
know if I
man,
want
the
to be
legend,
here
the
now.
myth. What would make you say that, Steve?
Oh, just the power of the intro, I guess.
Really? And what did you feel when you heard?
No, you guys are. I'm sorry I'm late. I was editing one of those things that you were talking about, and I got involved in it, and time stops for me. So
Yeah,
I'm here now.
that's great. Well, we were
But I
prepared to
agree
go
with
on without
Thanos.
you.
I think I love listening to you read your stuff. I think it works very, very well. And thank you for the kind comments. I'm going to find a way to capture this and use it in my promos. But you sent me a chapter of the new book, and I found it doing audiobook work is a peculiar and specific talent or skill. I'll call it a skill, and it requires different kinds of talents, but it's a peculiar skill, and technologically it is also. But you did a great job. I am glad that you hired me and that we got a chance to meet each other, and that I got that gig. But you can do this.
Yeah, well, I kind of felt like a lot of people said, Andy, there's such a vulnerable material in there. I'd love to have it coming from you. And I thought exactly because it's vulnerable material, sometimes it's hard. It was hard for me to even read. And I know what you shared as well. Sometimes you were reading.
It was emotional. It's such honest and raw confession material that and what I would do, Andy, was I would read it cold out loud.
Yeah.
There it is.
There it is. Bambos
Hold it
is
a little
holding
higher.
in front of your
my
face.
name over it, and I would read it raw. And, oh man, you do a really good Kilroy.
Thank you.
Yeah. He probably doesn't even know who that is.
He doesn't know who that is. No, way before that time.
But I would read it raw, and it would hit me like it would hit the reader. And if it needed to be fixed, I'd go back and do a reread. But I really tried to capture the honesty of that experience, that raw experience in the read.
Well, thank you for that. I loved listening it back, read back to me. It was really special.
I heard that it brought you to tears every chapter almost.
Almost every chapter, because it is so well, I have a theory that as contrary and difficult as most people can be from time to time, once you get to know that person and you understand what motivated them, what drives them, why they made the choices that they made, it's very difficult not to love that person. And so
can you just stop there for a second? That's such a beautiful insight. Just that.
Yeah. And I think there are people who can find that possible. But I don't. I think when you have honest writing, I think when a real person shows up on paper, that's what moves us. That's the thing that kind of breaks down the facade and the social presentation that we make to the universe, and gives us a chance to be. And that's the lovely thing about writing, about reading and listening to an audiobook, is that you're invisible. You're not in the show. The fourth wall is there, and you get a chance to get into it and become that innocent person who is having the experience.
Yeah, and I assume that brought you obviously back to your own experiences. Otherwise,
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I love,
and I think it was. I thought that you were probably going to use that in your tour. I thought to then have an exercise that says, now go do this, write something about those kinds of things that have touched you. I think it would be effective to do that. I think anybody that reads that book ought to do it with a notebook beside them.
Yeah. Bambos has read it 9 times. So
well, actually, I've listened to it 7 times.
Wow.
So I've listened to you.
Are you kidding me?
No.
Wow.
Yeah.
Where'd you find this guy, Andy?
I know. You kidding me?
He found me in a packet of crisps. He opened it and he was like, buy one, get one free.
There's another one of you out here?
It was the Cracker Jack box. He was the treat at the end.
That's not good.
I love that we talk about this, and I'm happy that we started there. But I would love to get to you. So, like, let's confirm your age. What age are we talking right
In
now?
February, I was 70.
In February, you're 70.
And you look fucking awesome.
He does, doesn't he?
Yeah. Even with the clarity with which you speak to us, like you don't come across as 70.
No,
You
he's
think
in
people
love.
decay?
He's in love, Bambos. Are you
Well,
kidding me?
well, actually, it makes me curious. Like you seem to be aging like really well.
Well, thank you.
Mm.
I
And
appreciate that.
I love the background with the trophies and the story master.
Mm-hmm.
I made a movie when I was 17 years old, and we rented a camera, and it was a thing called the
Texas
Eastman
Chainsaw
Kodak
Massacre.
Teenage- Huh?
Texas
What?
Chainsaw Massacre.
No. It was a teenage
Difficult.
movie award contest that Kodak did, and it was the first of the era of film festivals, kind of, and the contest so that kids could make a film and get some recognition. And my buddy and I rented a Bolex 16 millimeter camera and shot the thing, and then turned it back in. And 30 years later, I wanted to have one like that, and so I ordered it on eBay. And when it came, it had a little slip of paper that it was from the estate of the guy that I rented it from. So I think that's my camera.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is beautiful.
Yeah, cool stuff.
So I want to just cut to the chase. Where did you meet this woman?
Yes.
Was it like Tinder?
No. 35 years ago, I was visiting my biological father, whom I had not known in my life. And she was married to a member of the family at that time. And we got to be fast friends. We enjoyed talking with each other and visiting. And then my biological father died, and I saw her at the funeral, and we visited about that. In fact, she and she and I and his widow, he was cremated, and we went out onto an island, and the guy who took us out there brought a post hole digger, and we physically buried my father. And so she was there at that little crucial part in my life. And like so many relationships, you meet somebody, you have a period of time with them, and it's pleasant and wonderful, and then they're gone and out of sight, out of mind. And it was in August, I got this Facebook message, and it said, "Are you Dick McCurdy's son?" And I answered back and said, "One of them. Who is this?" And she said, "Well, this is Jeannie." And she started saying some stuff. And I went, "Jeannie." And she had found me. She had gone and looked and found me. And so we got on the phone and we started visiting. And I found out that the person that she was married to was my half brother. Mm-hmm. And they had gotten a divorce about 30 years ago. This was 35 years ago. And so 30 years ago, they got a divorce. I was divorced, and we started visiting, and we spent 3 to 5 hours a day on the phone every day, and really getting to know each other. I started to learn about my family, things that I had not, people that I had known, my grandmother, my half brother, half sister. She had all the stories because she lived through it. And it was a wonderful journey. Now, I had been planning, interrupt me with a question at any time.
No, I'm loving the story. Continue.
I had been, my lease on the apartment that I had in Houston was coming to an end. And for a year and a half, I had been thinking, when this thing rolls over, it's time for me to do something different. I had told you that, Andy, when you were doing your tour, that I wanted to kind of maybe do something along that line.
I know, but like at 70, I kind of thought you would maybe move to another house or something.
Well, I had thought about moving to the hill country of Texas because I've got a number of friends there. I had founded and had built and developed a theater company in Houston that I had kind of everybody was in place.
Yeah, I saw that.
They didn't necessarily need me anymore, and it had consumed all of my time. And I was watching them run with it, and I was thinking, you know, I don't know if I'm acting as an anchor here or not, but it's not working for me. I was like a ghost. I was like, you know, Bill Gates or something. I needed to kind of get back, step out of the way, and just let them run and play with all that. And so I was looking for a place to go. I was looking for what the next chapter was, and I had some things that I've written that I had thought about. Oh man, thank you for playing the promo for Whiteman Scenario. I'd forgotten I'd even had that. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I was thinking about going somewhere. Well, when Jeannie and I started talking, I said, well, you know, I'm thinking about doing a tour and whatnot. So maybe you know, maybe I'll come through there. And so we got together, and I came over and met her friends. And this is a cool little town, despite your slander.
All I know is I know nowhere in Georgia, and all I hear on the news is they've just let everyone there's no corona regulations in Valdosta, Georgia. That's all I heard on the news in here.
I had not heard that, but
yeah.
Valdosta, yesterday, a couple of days, and all the Mexican restaurants packed. It was I was shocked at that. But so anyway, she and I started visiting. We started going back and forth. And I thought, well, if I'm going to move somewhere anywhere, why don't I just do a year in Valdosta and see where this goes? I like the community, I like the people. And so I packed up, I came here, and then the world got shut down by COVID.
So I'd like to dig into this. So the way you tell the story is such a casual, like, oh, I just sort of had this, and I just did this, and I popped it in the van. And I mean, like all I know in my own life, there are moments when they're like these, like I hit a crossroad and I choose to go down a path I always know it was really comfortable, or I choose something that I don't know what the outcome's going to be.
Right.
And I notice the older I get, the more challenging it is to take the harder path, because it's like, hold on, I know all the traps down that, or I assume I do, right? Because we tell the story that we know it, which stops us from taking risks. So in a weird way, you've kind of sanitized a moment where you really took massive risks. Even when I asked you if you want to do the show, I even had the impression, like, Candy, maybe if you make me aware of how much of a risk I really did take, then I don't even know if that would be comfortable, kind of thing. You know, that was the humor of our email exchange back and forth. And so do you celebrate the fact that you really did something that was, say, what most people would not have taken that risk? Or is it just something that's so common to you, you just said, oh, it was just a natural progression in my life?
Well, thank you for the most people say to me, you did what? You know, and I don't want to say that I'm an adrenaline junkie, because I'm not. I don't do, you know, I'll try anything, but I'm a little scared about anything, you know, jumping out of airplanes and whatnot. I'd love to do it, but I'd like it to be a virtual experience first.
Mm-hmm.
But I have always wanted, I would rather regret things that I did that I probably shouldn't have done than not do them and regret not having lived that way. Can we take a second? Let me
please
fix it straight.
Do it. Yeah, that's a beautiful statement.
He's my hero.
Yeah. I mean, it's true. It's like better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all. I mean, the whole thing is like, if you're waiting around to die, then you're not really living. It's the same sort of the same feeling over and over again. At least I felt.
And worst case scenario, she would have broken your heart, and you would feel the joy that you fell in love and you got heartbroken. Like epic.
Well, my philosophy has always been, I would rather trust and be screwed than not be a trusting person. I don't want to live my life. I've never wanted to live my life in fear of not surviving a loss. And my family and the people that are around me have kind of wished that I would have a little more fear, because I have experienced a lot of loss.
Yeah.
But I've also experienced a really remarkable set of experiences. When I was in my 30s, I was directing a show. It was an original play, and it was just a wonderful play. It was fabulous, and so when you produce an original work like that, it takes a big chunk of your time. It's like the book tour
Yeah.
that Andy was talking about. If you knew what you were getting into when you started it, you might not have
You might
started.
not have done it, yeah.
And I think that's true of many things in life. And so, anyway, I did the play. I thought it was great, but I was exhausted. So I went to New York to see some shows, and I'm sitting there going, nothing I'm seeing is as good as this play. And so I said, I wonder how you bring a play to New York. And I looked in the yellow pages for producers, and I picked a name that was on a street that I knew I could find.
Yeah.
And that was my research was, okay, I know where that address is. And I called and told the people what I was trying to do. And they said, oh, well, we'll hang on a second. And this guy comes on the phone and says, well, what are you doing? I said, well, I did a play, and it's a really good play, and I'm looking around here, and I think it ought to be here. And he said, well, why don't you come talk to me? And so I went over, I sat down, and so I opened the door. You know, it's this big building on 45th Street, New York City, and I'm kind of, you know, and I opened the door, huh?
What was this?
That's my heart pounding.
Oh, like, okay.
Yeah, and I get off the elevator, and it's the doors with the frosted glass pane in it with the gold lettering from the 40s. And I swung the door open, and the door swings open against the wall, and just past the door there is a little shelf, and on that shelf is a Tony Award. And it was a Tony that this producer had won for the show that he had produced. And I thought, I think I just bit off more than I can chew. But he invited me into his office, huge office, piano on one side, big desk. He sat on the couch with me, and we visited, and I could see that there were play readings in that room. There were musical pitches in that room. I was in the real deal. And so I said, I don't know where to begin. I don't know what it takes. And he said, well, let me give you an outline, and this. And he said, can I get a copy of the play to read? I said, I'll send you one. And I found out what it took, and the kind of budget that it would take to put together. And the process in New York is you do a showcase production, which the Actors Equity will allow you to pay this very, very tiny amount to actors, and you can run for a week or 10 days, and you invite investors to come, and then if they like it, they move it on. Well, I went back to Houston. I thought about it, and I said, I think we ought to do this. And so I packed up my then wife was an actress who had been in the play, and this was her way to get to New York too. And we put everything in a trailer and went to New York and found a place to live and put up but that was in May. And in August we moved, and in September we did the showcase, and in January we opened off Broadway.
Wow.
And lost we lost our shirts. I mean, it was critical acclaim. I've got right over here on the wall, I've got the New York Times review saying this is the best drama in New York that's going to close because you can't see it because they can't advertise it. Please go. And that didn't work, but it was an incredible experience. And it was a terrible experience because in Houston in theater, we had always done things for the story. We had done things for the sake of telling the story. And the byproduct of that was some acclaim and applause and fame and that stuff. Yeah. In New York, it was about, where's my name? What typeface is it in? And half of the actors loved the show and wanted to, but our main leads, all they wanted was what they got out of it. And I was very discouraged by that. And in the midst of all that, my son was born, and I contend that had he not been born at that time, I might not have wanted to keep going down the road.
Wow.
It was terribly discouraging.
Like
Yeah.
as you're sharing, I notice my heart is really pounding fast
Mm.
because I live in that way, and just to hear someone else speaking from that space, like
Yeah.
I'm gonna start crying.
Mm.
It's really touching.
Andy, I
Yeah.
see why you found this guy. He's one of us crazies.
Yeah, I mean, when we haven't discussed your past as much, and obviously, it's kind of not a big surprise that you would have done stuff in your past that resembles what you're doing now. But
Right.
like in a way, I would say, I was just with the launch of the new book, I have a new website. And literally 10 minutes before coming here, I had to do an FAQ of
Oh yeah.
like it was basically the website has a lot of graphics, but it doesn't have a lot of content. And so the designer said, Andy, you got to do an FAQ. You got to do like questions people would ask you. And it was like, and the last question I said were, who are your heroes? Right? Who are the people you look up to? And I
Right.
laughed because I'm like, my heroes are exactly the people that take risks exactly at the moments when it's not convenient and there's no one there to support them. And
Right.
and they're looked as geniuses after the fact, but at the time when they stood alone trying to create, no one understood what they were trying to do, and they actually could get no support from anyone because it was their vision, not anyone else's.
That's my life right there.
Yeah.
Most of what I mean, you try to assemble a tribe around you. And here, I'll give you an example. We did the showcase off Broadway in this little tiny theater on across the street from a major theater. And we were on the second floor, and on the third floor was a Jamaican disco. And they kicked in about 15 minutes before the end of our show, and they were right above us. And it was the dramatic thing where the brother is, going to leave home, and he's going to take his little brother, and he's going to abandon the family and all that sort of stuff. And everybody's about to, and the special needs child looks at him and says, "No, that's not the way we do. That's not how we can do it." And everybody in the room is, tears are streaming down their face. And then we go,
And then you got Bob Marley.
And so I went up, and everybody in there is 9 feet tall and 700 pounds. There's these big Jamaican people.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm doing a show downstairs, and when you guys kick in, the show's, it's right at the climax, and they're going, "What do you want us to do, man?" And I said, "Can you hold off for these next 4 days while we're still, I'm showing investors, and if they cry, I might get the money. And if they don't cry," and and this guy got right up in my face, and he says, "Let me see this show." And so he came the next night, and he was, he was crying, and he's going, "We not play music until you're done." So we got an ally there.
Nice.
So we closed the showcase. Investors had come. Nobody had bet. Nobody had done anything. And that was September. And so my son is tiny. My dream has not worked. I went to work at a local bank as a drive-in teller because that's how I put myself through college. And I was thinking, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do? And Christmas comes. We can't do squat hardly for Christmas. And the phone rings on the night before New Year's Eve, and it's one of the guys who had come to see the show. And he said, "I was just checking on what's the progress on Man Enough?" And I said, "It's dead." And he said, "Why?" He said, "It was a wonderful play." I said, "Well, nobody stepped up. I can't find an investor that wants to take the swing at it." And he says, "Oh, well, what's your budget?" And I told him, and he said, "Okay, well, let me make a couple of calls." Well, he makes a couple of calls, and I'm thinking, well, at least somebody's interested. Maybe something will happen. At New Year's Day in the afternoon, I get a call, and he says, "Well, I got a bunch of friends together, and we've got the money. So when do you want to start?"
Nice.
And so we I found
how did it make you feel?
Say it again.
How did that impact you? You must have been like,
It
still,
was, I don't know what it's like to have a terminal disease and then get it cured, but I felt like it was over. I had let it go. I had said, well, I brought a show to New York. How many people have done that? And but I was grieving for this wonderful piece of literature not finding a bigger audience.
I'd love to touch this, by the way, if I may, just to cut in on this, because this is one of these moments in life that I see a pattern, which is so like apparent to me through the years, that or one goes on a journey to see what they want to discover. They have an expectation of what it will look like in the end.
Right.
And then they go through the suffering and the misery. They give up on it. And then in giving up on it, then they get it.
Yeah.
And then
in releasing the expectation, very Buddhist, you
Yes.
release the expectation, and then what you get addresses the hunger, but it's not the meal you expected.
It's not the meal you expected. I see it all the time, and everyone that's like it's about the journey and not about the outcome. And then as soon as it becomes about the outcome that isn't achieved, like the frustration gets, and then you get the thing you actually wanted,
Right.
and yet you're still not happy because in the weird way you lost the appetite in the journey.
Uh-huh. And then,
Yeah.
of course, the experience was great and terrible at the same time, just like you were talking about. Yeah. So that's, and we limped along. Everybody in the show got an agent except my wife, and her role was, and she was the invisible character that holds everything together.
Mm-hmm.
Her acting was brilliant. It was phenomenal. And it was so transparent that it made everybody else look great.
Mm.
And she got good reviews. I mean, all that sort of stuff, but it didn't produce the opportunity for her that it did for other people in the show. And about 4 months later, we were starving to death, and after it closed, and I had been a video producer, media producer in Houston, and I had turned all of my stuff over and my clients. And one of the clients called me and said, "Look, I know you're not in this business anymore, but the guy that replaced you has got this thing so screwed up, and we go live with this in 8 days. Is there a chance you could fix it?" And I said, "Well, I don't know what's wrong with it. I don't know what you're doing." And they said, "Well, if we send you a plane ticket, can you be here tomorrow to come work on it?" And I said, "Well, I got a job and stuff." And they said, "Well, let us advance you." And they named a number, and the number was what I make in 2 months at the bank.
Yeah.
And so I said, "I think I can pack a suitcase." Sure.
Squeeze that in.
And so I went, and like so many things, Andy, and I'm sure that, is it Bambos? I don't know that name.
Yeah.
I don't understand that. What is that? Tell me your name.
It means joyful glow.
Bambos.
Son of a.
I know, right?
That's great, man.
Yeah.
Now,
That's
is that
why
an
we have the
acquired
lights above him so that the glow comes off of the top of his head.
rude of you to notice, hair boy?
Stop being a dick. Go on.
Anyway, so I got there, I looked at it, and I think it's probably like anything that field of expertise. I could see the flaw, the story structure flaw in what they were doing. It was easy to correct, but they thought it was genius because, it's like the plumber that goes to the thing and it's all plugged up and he taps on the pipe and it's good. And, it gives them a bill for $100, $1 for tapping, $99 for knowing where to tap. So I did that. And they went, "Great." And I was getting ready to get back on the plane. They went, "Well, no, we got another show that we need to do. And we fired that guy. So can you do it?" And I went, "Well, let me call home." And I said, I got to write this thing and I got to do this. And so, and ended up 5.5 months later and 10 shows later and all that money later, I brought Alyssa and Chase from New York back to Houston and opened Storymaster Pictures. And I'd had my New York experience. She was devastated, but Alyssa got back to Houston, went to her agent, signed up. The next day, got a movie, and she worked every day in voiceover, film, or television until she died of a brain tumor at 38.
My.
But and here's an interesting thing. She never thought that it was real because it wasn't in New York or LA.
Wow.
Wow.
Wow. So basically, it's that whole thing that you get what you want, but it's not in the shape or form you expected it.
And you're blessed if you accept it. If you look around and if you're committed to outcome, if you're committed to a path and an outcome, you're always going to compare what you're going through to what you thought it ought to be. And that's a recipe for dissatisfaction. I think that's why so many incredibly wealthy people are so dissatisfied, because they think stuff is going to fix it for me. And it's not a stuff problem.
No.
Yeah. For me, it's like always have the vision and then surrender. Have a vision and surrender, like trust that process.
Right.
I'm really curious, Steve, like about your, like, how was your internal world? Like, how did you deal with your thoughts, like putting doubt in you, and how did you overcome that? How did you deal with your mind, pretty much?
Well, that's a dance that is cyclical. I try to be a very positive person. I try to find a way to say I don't focus on what's going wrong. I say, what do I have left? What do I have to work with here? Because I can't do a lot about what's gone wrong. And it gets me down from time to time, but I've been blessed. I mean, my son, and I was 35 when Chase was born, and he was born in the midst of all of this. We were, we had just gotten the green light on the play, and he was born like 4 weeks later. And so we were new parents. She was recovering. She was going to be able to play the role that she created. And I was struggling with money. And Alyssa was tiny. Chase was big. And so her pelvis was damaged when he was born. And so she had 10 days of rest. I did everything. I was carrying him to her to feed and changing him, doing all these things. So I was changing him because I could tell that the diaper was, in need of that. And as I pulled it down, I discovered that he wasn't done, and he peed in my face. And I, covered it back up, and I laughed. And I thought, I can't think of another occasion where someone would piss in my face and that would find that funny.
Yeah.
So it must not be the pissing that's the stimulus. It must be the intent. It must be the context, because the event is objectionable, but the circumstance is hilarious and innocent. And so I tried to say, okay, that just hit you, and that's a big damn deal. I think that that's the way that you should react to everything that happens, is don't react to the event. Look for what there is there to move forward from, because there's no sense in objecting to something that's happened. What does it leave you? And I don't do that all the time. It doesn't. But I cling to it and I reach for it, and that's the island of security. To when it's dark, remember that, and that, and scripture, and a bunch of other things. And I'm a Pollyanna. People say I'm a Pollyanna about some of those things, but
Pollyanna?
Pollyanna was a character. It's a Disney film. Pollyanna was this little girl who was just happy about everything. And even when things would go bad, she'd go, well, maybe we can find a way. And she was very naive. But she changed the whole community with that naivete, because then she gets cancer and finds a way to, be positive through it. And the whole community, who thinks that she's a pain in the ass, then goes, why in the world would God strike this child? And they rise up, out of their curmudgeonliness. Well, and so the term in the US, Pollyanna, means an innocent naive character, but who isn't wrong, you know?
I feel that this live is like one of those gems.
Yeah, there's like three things you said in this last that sort of felt like they're like they're I would say overarching themes that if one wants to have a life full of love and flow, that's the. I mean, starting with the pee in the face. Like,
Yeah,
like when you said the pee in the face, I recognized there's very few people I know that would react the way I would react to that, which is how you react to it.
right.
So that we're very, very similar in. And
Oh, well, I think that was the reason when we first communicated that I thought I want to get this book. I want to be the guy to do this book, and I hope I don't screw it up. I hope I can do this because I recognize a kindred spirit in this message, and I want to do it because I want to do it, but I also want to spend time with these ideas, and then I became concerned in my ego that I don't want to let this down. I don't want to be the reason this isn't everything that it could be. I want to, if I can't be the platform that it stands on, I need to get out of the way and say, Andy, I don't know if I don't know if I'm the right guy for this.
But then again, if you think about it from my perspective, right?
Yeah.
Like, let's say you fucked it up royally, okay?
Yeah.
For a moment. And let's say that fuck up was the little kid pissing in my face.
Okay.
So that would have been what it was for me.
Yeah.
So all I knew is that I really liked you a lot, right? And then I thought to myself, whatever comes out of that in my life, if that's the flow I follow, I'll follow it. Like what I've learned.
And that's pretty much what I got from the takeaways from your book about the way that you interpreted your life. I mean, the events of your life, which were, I've told a lot of people, I said, I think I take risks. This guy, rolls the dice every time he gets comfortable. He goes, I'm not comfortable being comfortable. I'm going to go do something else. And, but your takeaways from those things followed that same pattern. Struggle, grief, frustration, release, acceptance. Yeah,
and I'll follow the joy of the process more than the outcome. So the fact that I enjoyed our contact was very clear to me. We're going to do it. And I got my criticism, Andy, this is not, the voice isn't a young voice that encapsulates whatever it is that you embody today.
Right.
That I got that criticism and I'm like, great. Of course. That's great. That's exactly what it was. It was like the one thing
somebody didn't like my voice.
Well, they wanted this young kid who basically they thought, oh yeah, it's a young, the young version of me speaking sort of thing.
Right.
But the thing that I just wanted to just embrace was that as you speak about that, there's such I can't encapsulate what that means to me in my life to be pissed on the face and laugh at it and kind of love it, to the point that Ronnie will sometimes be, how the hell can you find so much joy in a situation, like we're going to miss our airplane. Right. And I'm like, and I was like, isn't this the greatest moment of our life? Like we were on the Shard and I wrote the story. Remember the story of Jan, the mirror maker that you read? Mm-hmm. Ronnie and I were in the Shard, this humongous building in London, and we're sitting there and we're writing the story. It's the first time we've ever been together writing. And Ronnie isn't easy to write with because she needs a lot of structure. So she didn't write. I just asked her questions. I said, what does Jan do for a living? What is it? So I started to ask her in questions. And whatever she answered, I wrote into this story. And then what ended up happening is we had this incredible moment. And it was so beautiful that we missed our flight. And then she is livid. She is so angry. She is really angry. And I'm like, I go, baby, this is the best. We just missed an airplane because we wrote our first story. We'll be telling this story the rest of our. It's worth the. She
Yeah.
didn't.
Well,
She didn't.
and that's that's something we absolutely share. I named my company Storymaster not because I think I am, but because I think that's who I serve. I serve that spirit that hides all of our lessons in stories and then whispers them in our ear. And story is the best way to teach or learn anything because it's integrated and but it's maybe hidden. It may not be crystal clear, but Jesus taught in parables, and
exactly.
So in fact, I went to seminary for a while, not because I wanted to be a minister, but because I wanted to understand why scriptural stories for the Old Testament, the New Testament, and then all of wisdom literature, why is that enduring? Is it a structure thing? What is it? And but I'm addicted to story, and I will sacrifice most anything for a really good story.
Yeah.
I mean, you're one of the most captivating speakers we've had, and like let's just put it this way: it's not about the content, but it's the energy that carry your words.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Like I notice I'm really feeling embodied when I'm with you. That's the impact.
I'm tickled by that. Thank you so much.
So I don't want to deny that in the beginning, I still have a question. What happened to your half brother?
He's in Arkansas, married with a child, and we don't communicate. Both of my half siblings are folks that I got a chance to meet. We have, and well, through Jeannie, I have learned that the only thing that Mike and I have in common is some DNA, but we are very, very different human beings. And he lives in a little rural area, and a very his life is
insular,
contained compared to mine. And my half sister the same way.
Let's face it, you weren't raised in a location that was sort of nurturing your skill set. So, you don't know much necessarily about the U.S., but if you're in the field that Steve is in, you go to the coast. You go Los Angeles, New York.
Yeah.
And everywhere in the middle is sort of like, oh, you're in the arts field. Oh, you must be gay. That's kind of that's the sad reality we live in, right? Yeah.
Right. And my mother was a banker. My stepfather, who raised me, owned a construction company. Mm-hmm. And if it wasn't one of those two things, they didn't, or business related to that, they didn't understand. And they would not understand why I would work on a play for free for 6 weeks and then, run for 4 weeks. They didn't understand it. And I think I'll tell you another quick story. Mom, because I had opened a show in New York, my mother came to see it and also to see my son because she, was first grandchild. And she sat through the show and, at the moment with the, where everybody's so moved. Well, let me just, I tell stories that end up being more stories. I had a half brother, stepbrother, who was special needs. And Harry was the sweetest kid in the universe, but he screwed everything up. And he was everything. And he
I'm losing him.
Are you ready? Are you stopping me?
We've lost the sync of your video and your audio. So now it looks like the video caught up. So now we got to Harry and then we lost everything after that. So Harry was special needs and then he screwed everything up.
He was a sweetheart. Well, so when this play comes along with a special needs kid and a real smart older brother, I really identified with that. And in the play, the play is called Man Enough. And the smart older brother comes home from Houston to New York. The parents are old. They're going to put the boy in an institution because he's starting to get curious, and he's got twin cousins who are little, and they're girls, and they don't know how to explain anything to him, and they're my parents or his parents. And so he's objecting to this. No, you can't put him in an institution. You can't do this. You can't do that. And his life is pretty messed. He's messed it up thoroughly. But at the point of climax, Joey is looking at what his big brother is doing that's hurting everybody. And he stops it and says, no, Donald, I have to go. They can help me, and I maybe can help them. And he realizes his narcissism, his willfulness. It wasn't about helping Joey. It was about having his way. And so in that moment, you bleed for everybody in that family that's doing the best they can and are not equipped for the situation they're facing. And the one who is equipped to face it is the one who has special needs, the one who's retarded. And the poignancy of that, just I got a friend who says, if that don't light your fire, your wood is wet. And so my mother is sitting beside me, who doesn't understand theater and doesn't understand why. And my mother was not a demonstrative person in any way, not affectionate, none of that. And I'm sitting there watching it, and we're all moved, and I'm looking at it for the 400th time, and I'm getting welled up thinking about little Harry. And she reached over and took my hand, tears streaming down her face. And this is one of the few times in my life I've seen her cry. And she said, I get it. I know why you do this now.
Yeah.
And if it cost me everything, but I would pay it again.
Yeah.
Just to hear that sentence. This is a lot more fun than I thought it was going to be.
That's what everyone says when they come on.
It was probably the only time that you felt seen.
Yeah, it was the first time. You guys are a lot of fun. This is a fun process.
Yeah. Well, we decided early on that we were going to surrender to whatever showed up, and that sort of served us well.
How did you guys get together? Your audience may have heard this story before, but I haven't.
Not really. I mean, we hinted around it. Bambos was in a bad space, and I supported him, I would say, to kind of get onto his own 2 feet and then surpass me in that process. That's kind of what I would say.
Well, but how did he come into your life?
He came in because he came through another friend who was also kind of supporting him at that time, and then I became the support. I set clear boundaries of what was or wasn't acceptable in the relationship, and then I kind of eventually became kind of more like a father figure than a friend, and that was the development of our relationship.
I just had the fresh things. I was able to hear you all the way through, but I lost it for a while.
Yeah, we lost the audio as well. We lost you on the video and audio like before.
Right. Well, this is a fascinating. So it's very eclectic. It's wherever that guest goes, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the one thing we do ask on the show is that we ask that we don't want anyone to come in from an authority. So we're not looking to be a platform for people to tell other people how to live, the 5 best ways to succeed, and we also we like to go through, we had a psychic on. I just booked a
Transvestite.
No, not a transvestite. Don't do that.
Oh.
No, we have to. It is a drag queen.
Drag queen.
And we have a guy who found a Rembrandt 2 nights ago, made international news. He was on, so we had and then we invite people on that just are overcoming insecurity, or just so someone who doesn't have a book or have any following, just to discuss a vulnerable subject that we can all connect with.
People.
Yeah. And just folks. And I like that. I know for us, it's kind of interesting because I do it. I speak
Mhm.
for myself. I do it because I love it. And I love to be with people and share that experience. But I also see it isn't necessarily as marketable as when people say, we have a self-help hour. You can do and give us an hour of your time and we'll make you better at whatever it is you think you need to be doing.
Mm.
That's not our gig, right?
Yeah.
So in
Yeah.
that sense,
This is a visit with new friends.
yeah. I booked a very special guest that'll be fun. She was very big in the film industry in the 1950s. She did, several films, and she has her star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. And she was
Wow.
my drama teacher when I was in high school.
Oh,
And
cool.
and so I just spoke to her yesterday, so she'll be on in the show in a few weeks. And yeah,
That's
it's
great.
it's
That's
really
great.
meant to be a celebration of what we are. We try to find core themes. In your case, like for me, if I summarize your core theme, for me, it's really when you surrender to what's in front of you, like Chase pissing in your face. Like there's such a joy that arises from that,
Mm.
where one could never understand it if they lived in resistance of that. And,
Mhm.
and what I learned in your story back to me today was something that I didn't even know about myself until just now. Was that is that we are even more similar than I understood ourselves to be, because I live in story. Like when I coach and I consult and mentor people, I'm always saying, what's the angle? What's the story that's compelling? What's the reason why a person is going to invest in you? And it's not because of what you're doing, it's how you communicate what you're doing.
Yeah, it's not your resume. It's your ownership and embodiment.
We
We
lost you
lost you
again.
again. That's why I was talking a bit more, because we weren't hearing you. And I thought I'll summarize you until we figure out we can sync up with your video and audio again.
It's, yeah. So Bambos, put your glasses back on, and we'll all be black glasses guys.
Yeah, you got to put your glasses back on. Then we're going to sync up again.
And we get a picture of this, and then we need a still frame of the black glasses guys.
The black glasses. Nice.
Actually, the rectangular, all of us, huh?
Yeah, we all
Yeah.
got the rectangular thing going.
Yeah.
Like for me, how we started was actually downstairs with an iPhone without a backdrop, and it was
Right.
just like us. I'm like, Andy, we always have meaningful conversations, so why don't we just
Record it.
record it? And all of a sudden, it became a talk show and a backdrop, and getting more serious with microphones.
Yeah.
Well, things evolve, and of course the danger is that the structure then takes over. I think you guys have done a very effective job, and you probably are good accountability partners for that. Probably are just got it. That stuff is, but it's cool. Are you guys? Is this an OBS thing? How are you putting this together?
This is all going over StreamYard, which is a great platform you can use, and then it
Okay.
streams into
So
4 or 5 different places.
Okay, that's very, very cool. I'm going to look into it.
Yeah, you have to. I can strongly suggest anyone viewing, if you do want to do broadcasting, StreamYard is a nice, easy way to get in, and you can broadcast to several. This gets broadcast into YouTube, it gets into Periscope, and into
Facebook,
Twitch. So we're basically broadcasting in 5 different places simultaneously.
And maybe we can do this offline, but through another friend, I have access to a thing called. I'm creating a channel that we could air this on, and you can then get it on Roku and other things like that.
Fantastic.
I'll be in touch with you about that.
I look forward to it. I think it'd be best that we cancel now, because our network connection continues to kind of fail. So we're only getting every other word of what you're saying.
All right.
We'll continue offline, or we'll talk afterwards, only because Bambos and I are both kind of sitting there like, did you catch the second word or the third word?
Okay. It
Thank
was an honor to be here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was great to be with you. And we'll talk soon.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bambos. That was nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Steve McCurdy. If I hear him and I see how he's lived, we talked earlier at the start of the show, like the traits or the qualities I look up in, like look for in people that I aspire to in myself. Like he embodies so much of that.
Yeah.
There's an aspect of seeing that he said it, in the book, that there's a level of which he says, if I get too comfortable, then I don't necessarily like allow that to become my norm. Now, if I know anyone that pushes that further than I do, it's you.
Yeah.
So in some beautiful way, one thing that I see that all of us share is this deep desire to not let this time on this planet go to waste. And Steve at 70 basically said, I'm going to leave everything that I had. He was set up there. I mean, I could see from his post that he had a very strong network in Texas. So to leave all that behind, he made very light of it. But that's a big, big step for someone. Forget about the age. I mean, it would be a big step regardless. So congratulations and celebrating people that are living their fullest potential by not living in fear.
Yeah. Well, you can live in fear, but not let it define you.
Yeah,
I would
define you.
say fear is always there.
Yeah, true. Yeah, of course.
And in terms of comfort, like the more we try to claim comfort, we start to create a prison for ourselves.
Yeah,
right?
True. Yeah, I would say you stated it very well. Actually, the more we celebrate the fear is just another thing that we have to embrace in ourselves, the more we actually grow, learn, and it doesn't then, as you say, define us. So,
and one more thing, when I saw him, and I'm like, wow, for 70, you're like really sharp.
Yeah.
And now having gotten to know him a bit better, like it's not a diet, it's not anything. It's just like the choice to live on that edge.
Yeah, living on the edge
keeps you alive.
It keeps you alive. Yeah, you can get old very fast if you start just letting life just become a pattern that repeats itself because it's convenient. So,
so don't let yourself become a copy of a copy.
Yes, for sure not. And we thank you all for joining this episode of
A Wonderful Chaos.